right, in this second part, let's take what we learned about making cloth, and now let's take that cloth and inflate it. What can happen when we fill some of this cloth with air or a material and we can make it squishy like a pillow? So again, I'm going to start with a plane. I'm going to right click here, add plane, scale it up. That looks pretty good. Let's tab into edit mode, right click and subdivide. And I'm going to give it not quite so many cuts this time. I think I'll just do 50. That's going to be plenty for what we're doing here. And then I'm going to use E to extrude that up a little bit thicker this time. I want it to have kind of enough area around the side where I can puff it up. Okay, so this is going to become our pillow. And one thing, if you think about a pillow, it has a little seam that goes around the side where they've sewn it together, right? We need to create one of those on this object. So I'm going to move my mouse right to here, and I'm going to press Control R to do a loop cut. You guys have done these before, so you just click once. That cuts all the way through the object. Click again, and one more time makes it permanent. Okay, so now I have this whole part selected. We're going to pull that seam out a little bit. So let's select with the number 2 on your keypad, this edge, and then we'll do select loops, edge loops. Okay, that has now grabbed the seam all the way around the outside. And then I'm going to press S for scale and just pull this out so we create a shape that looks like that, right? You see the seam is sticking out all the way around the sides. Cool. Okay, we're going to tab out of edit mode. We're in object mode now. Let's add some materials here. We're going to do a modifier for cloth, and I'm going to turn that one on. We're going to go to our physics tab and give it some collision. And I think I'll go ahead and lift this up, GZ. Let's put one more plane below it so it has something to land on. Okay, Shift A, add a plane, scale it up. And then let's also give this plane in my physics tab some collision. So when these two hit, they'll actually interact. Okay, back to the pillow. One of the things you'll notice in the physics tab is when you add cloth, you get all of these different settings that you can change. And there's a whole other lesson we could do on all the different things you could alter here. But let's just do a couple. We're going to turn the quality up to 10. We're going to roll down here. I'm going to roll my click wheel down to the pressure tab. And I'm going to turn on a little bit of pressure. Let's give that 3. And what that means is that it's going to inject air inside this pillow and puff it up. Okay. And that should be all I really need to do. Let's go ahead and hit our space bar and we'll play out the animation. Come back over here. And you're going to see that pillow instantly fill up with air, drop, and it should hit the plane here in just a second. It's actually bouncing a little bit. It's got so much pressure in it. And finally, it'll kind of settle into a position that looks good. Okay. I think I might have put a little bit too much pressure in that pillow. Let's roll it back and let's turn the pressure down just to 2 and we'll run this again. Okay. Puffs up with air, drops. It's going to hit the plane. And then it's going to settle into a nice kind of pillowy shape. It bounces for a second there. Actually, I'll just stop it and I'm going to roll the animation back. I think it looked best right when it hit the ground there. Cool. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and right click it, convert it to a mesh. So now it's permanent, no more animation. And then if we really want to smooth out some of these lines, we'll add that subdivision surface modifier. Give it 2 levels. Looks awesome. And then turn the little button here to apply that transformation, make it permanent. Okay. Now just think of all the different things that you could make using this technique. You can inflate any object that has been turned into cloth and given some of that pressure. So you can actually create little characters that explode. You can create fabric patterns that get big and puffy, and then when they hit the ground, they flatten out. So all kinds of new horizons open up with that. Have fun testing this one out. Let's see what you guys come up with. Okay, so for this final part of the video, I'm going to combine the two things that I just showed you about making cloth, but add one more element where we're going to actually cut some holes out of that cloth. This is my pumpkin guy that we did together in class, and I'm going to go ahead and add a plane here. I'm going to scale it up. So we've got a nice big sheet that we can throw over him. And I'm going to go G, Z, and just lift this up above. You notice that I'm doing all this, by the way, in solid mode. I wouldn't want to do this with materials and lights on because it would just take way too much memory. Okay, let's tab in edit mode. We're going to subdivide this. We're going to give it, let's just do 50 cuts. I think that looked fine last time. And a little bit of thickness by pressing E and just give it a tiny bit of thickness there. Cool. Tab out of edit mode. We're going to apply the cloth modifier. And then in our physics tab, we're going to turn on collision. And we're going to go down to that setting for collisions and make sure that self collisions is turned on. Okay, if you don't see it, it's hidden right under this word collisions. You just turn that on, turn on self collisions. Okay. I'm also going to turn the quality up to 10 right here at the top. Roll this backwards. Cool. Then I need to put collision on pumpkin guy. So let's click him. He's already got collision on him, luckily. Okay, cool. So I've put my playhead back at 0. I hit play, and we're going to let this fabric drop. It hits on top. It's going to drape right over the top of that character and fold on itself. It's looking good so far. And I think right about there is where it starts to hang kind of like I want it to. So I'm going to pause the animation. Let me roll this back just a couple frames. I liked when it was just hanging right like that. That's great. Okay, so it looks good, a little pixelated, but don't worry about that. We're going to come over to modifiers. We're going to turn on, I think I had one of these on already. We're going to add a modifier for subdivision. And we'll turn, oops, that's on my pumpkin. Add subdivision to the cloth, give it a couple steps so that it's got that nice smooth look we're going for. And I think we're good to go. Let's go ahead and right click that, convert it to a mesh. Okay. So now we've got a little character with a costume, and we can cut out some eye holes in this using a modifier that we haven't tried yet. I'm going to go ahead and add, let's add a sphere here. Pick it up. We'll scale him down a little bit, and we'll push this so that it's kind of peeking out of the cloth. Let me get a good top view over here. Maybe shrink him a little. Push this through. That looks pretty good. Okay, that's one eye. Let's give him 2. Shift D, and we'll move it in the Y direction, and then we'll push it back. Just so it's kind of sticking through the cloth material. Okay, those 2 objects are going to be the thing that I use to cut some holes into this fabric. And so I'm going to group them together. Let's take this one and this one. Control J. They're grouped. There's my fabric group. And with the fabric selected, I'm going to add a modifier called Boolean. That's a really weird name for a modifier, but it actually does something pretty cool. When you put a Boolean on an object, you can tell it that you want to use another object to cut a hole into it. So for example, if I take the eyedropper and I click on those spheres that I made, it's going to use those spheres to cut a hole into the fabric. Okay. And at first it doesn't look like anything happened. But if I go to my list here, these are the spheres right there, and I hide these, you can see it's actually cut a hole into that shape. Okay. So I can use that to create really complex objects. A lot of times what we do with a Boolean modifier is if I were to bring this over RX90, let me stand this up. Let's tab in. I'm going to make like a little wall shape here. And let's say I wanted to cut a window out of that wall. I could add a cube, right? Like there's a big cube right there that's sticking through that wall. I grab that wall surface, add Boolean, and then take my eyedropper and say, use this cube as the thing that's going to make the hole. And you can see here, it actually already made the cut, but the cube that we put in there is just kind of blocking it. You see it's right here. I'm going to turn off its eye and its camera, and now it's created a hole in there. The neat thing about Booleans is if you take that cube, let me turn this on, and let's say that I decide, oh, that's not where I wanted the window to be. I actually want it over here on the side. I can move it over and that hole just follows with it. Okay. And it also will take on the characteristics of whatever I do to this cube. So if I were to, let's say, bevel this, okay, and then hide that cube, now I've got a window that has a bevel in it. So if you know that, you can make all kinds of really complex window shapes. We can take this edge and this edge, bevel this off, roll my click wheel. Okay, and then when I hide that cube, now I've got an arch window. Okay, so try out this bevel tool. I want to see if you can cut some holes through objects using different primitives, and get the hang of how you use that, because we're going to use it a lot in our next project. All right, guys.